Hello, and welcome back to the train to impossible places. We left off on chapter 3. We're on chapter 4. You can see it says the interdimensional postal office. Pretty cool, huh? Susie pressed herself flat against the door to the coach. The train was still accelerating, and the pull of the wind was getting stronger. If she stayed out here much longer, it would simply pluck her from the side of the train and cast her off into darkness. For the first time, she realized how impulsive and unplanned this all was and began to feel scared. She was clinging to the outside of the train, a magic train, if such a thing were possible, hurtling through a tunnel that shouldn't exist on its way to who knew where. Her parents couldn't help her. She was alone and already in danger. She was still holding Fletch's metal rod, she realized, and stuffed it into her bathrobe pocket for safekeeping. She had meant to throw it back to him before she jumped, but there hadn't been time to think. Nor was there time to feel guilty now. She made sure her grip on the handle was secure, then raised her free hand and knocked as hard as she could on the door. Nothing happened. The door had a small window set in it, but a blind had been folded closed behind it, so she couldn't see. She knocked again, hard enough it hurt her knuckles. "Hello?" she shouted. "Is anyone there? Wilmot, please." Nobody answered, and her imagination taunted her with a horrible idea. What if Wilmot couldn't hear her over the noise of the locomotive? She would be stuck out here alone until... The door swung open, knocking her back on her heels. She tried to regain her grip on the handle, but her fingers slipped, and she windmilled her arms. Right in front of her was Wilmot, his eyes wide with shock in the small gap between his collar and his cap. "You?" he yelped. "Help!" she cried as she started to tip backward. He darted forward and caught her bathrobe cord, stopping her mid-fall. "Got you," he said, and then his eyes widened again as her weight began dragging him steadily out the door. "Pull!" she cried. "I am pulling!" He braced first one foot, then the other against the inside of the doorframe, leaning back almost horizontally in his effort to stop them both from falling. "Help!" she shouted. Their tug-of-war stretched the bathrobe cord taut. Susie reached out and grabbed it, pulling herself hand over hand until she was standing upright again. At which point, without her weight as a counterbalance, Wilmot dropped backward onto the floor with a thud. Yanking her in through the door, she tripped over him and went sprawling on her front. They both lay there for a moment, catching their breath. "Thank you," said Susie. "I think you just saved my life." "Really?" Wilmot gave an embarrassed little smile. "Well, I'm happy to be of service, and He broke off, and his face went pale. "What am I saying?" He sprang to his feet. "This isn't allowed. You're not supposed to be here." He ran in a little circle, flapping his hands in panic. "I need to call Mr. Stonker. I need to call HQ." "Please don't," said Susie, getting up. "I don't want them to send me back." "But they have to. You're in breach of regulations. Only authorized personnel are allowed in here, and you're unauthorized." "I'm not going to cause any trouble," she said. "I just wanted to see where this train was going, and to get away from Fletch." As if to underline her point, she pulled the door shut, muffling the scream of the wind in the tunnel. Wilmot paused. "Oh, well, that much I can quite understand. I've always found him thoroughly disagreeable. He doesn't have an ounce of respect for the work I do here." He spread his arms to encompass the whole carriage. Susie looked around. It was a cramped but cozy, stuffed from floor to ceiling with bundles of letters, parcels, and other more strangely shaped objects, most of them wrapped in brown paper and string. A small wooden desk had been squeezed in among it all. The lamp that stood on it cast a warm, reassuring glow. It all had the sense of a well-ordered business. Not a scrap of space had been wasted. "It looks like a little post office," she said. "That's exactly what it is," Wilmot said, brightening. Susie guessed he liked talking about his work. We receive, sort, and distribute mail from throughout impossible places. No package too big, no postcard too small. Come rain, shine, or meteor shower," she chipped in. "Yes, Stonker told me. But what are impossible places?" The question appeared to surprise him. "You mean you don't know?" He frowned. He seemed to be constructing his answer in his head, and Susie guessed he was trying to find words for something so self-evident he had never dreamed he would ever have to explain it to anyone. It made her feel a little foolish. "They're home," he said with a little shrug. "The Union of Impossible Places, or sometimes just The Union for short, all the weird and magical places that don't quite fit anywhere else. Yes, but what are they, she said. Are they different countries, different planets? They're a bit of everything, really, he said. Cities, realms, worlds, and dimensions, plus a few spaces no one can quite agree on a name for, all different shapes, sizes, and types, threaded all throughout reality. Susie blinked. Her brain was so busy trying to process such a huge concept that it wasn't able to provide her with a better reply than, "It all sounds very interesting." Interesting? Wilmot lifted his cap and scratched his head and thought, "Yes, I suppose it is, really. And I'm quite lucky that my job lets me see a lot of places. Even if it's never for very long, I'm usually too busy in here." Susie looked around for the first time, realized what was missing from the sorting car. "Do you do all this by yourself? There's no one to help you?" "In an ideal world, I'd have a sorting team and a squad of posties to handle the deliveries," he said. "My grandfather was in charge of a dozen sorting cars like this one and a staff of 100 trolls. My father had a staff of 50. Of course, things were very different in those days, but I do my best." Susie looked again at the towers of letters and boxes. "But there's so much of it." "Yes, I suppose there is." He gave a nervous little laugh, as though only just realizing this fact himself. He soon rallied. "But it's nothing a little hard work can't fix. The Union has relied on the impossible postal service for generations, and it's still as reliable as the day it was founded." The train jolted, and he fell over sideways. Susie helped him up again. "That was the end of the tunnel," he said, his anxiety returning. "We're almost there." "Almost there? Or almost where?" She hurried to the little window in the door and pushed the blind aside. The land outside was featureless, a desert of frosty blue and stretching to the horizon, broken only by skeletons of a few dead trees. But the sky, Susie stared in wonder. She had never seen so many stars, not even in her astronomy books. They pulsed and flared like fireworks, strobing yellow, purple, and green against the neon ink stain of a huge nebula. Whatever sky this was, it was a long way from her own. "It's beautiful," she exclaimed. "Where are we?" When Wilmot didn't answer, she tore her eyes away from the window to see him pacing in circles around the desk, clutching a small, square parcel in one hand and an antique fob watch in the other. "She'll turn me to stone," he fretted, "or file a complaint, or both." "Who will?" said Susie. Wilmot jumped as though he had forgotten she was there. "This is a priority package," he said, holding it up for her to see. "That means 5 hours delivery, doorstep to doorstep, guaranteed." Susie looked at the address on the parcel and read simply, "The Lady Crepuscula, the Obsidian Tower, the Crepusculan Wastes." And below that, in red ink, "Fragile." "Who's Lady Crepuscula?" she asked. "It's been 5.5 hours already?" "It's been 5.5 hours already," he said, recommencing his pacing. "We're 30 minutes late." "I see." Susie couldn't understand why he was getting so worked up about a simple parcel. But when the wonders of the cosmos lay right outside his door, but realized it wouldn't help his mood to say so. Instead, she said, "She might be a bit annoyed, but I'm sure she'll understand if you'll explain why you're late." "Explain?" he said. "Nobody explains things to Lady Crepuscula. She's the most powerful sorceress in the Union, one of its highest authorities. She explains things to you." The color was draining from his face again. "Oh, what am I going to do? I can't face her like this. She'll blast me into next Tuesday." "She's not really that bad, is she?" said Susie. "She's worse. She's perfectly horrid." Susie looked at the quivering little figure in the oversized uniform, and two things happened at once. The first was that she realized she felt sorry for him. He must spend so much of his time shut up in this little carriage, she reasoned, doing work of 100 trolls all alone, and she supposed she was at least partly responsible for the delay that now had him so worried, even if it hadn't exactly been her fault. The second was an idea that lit her mind up as bright and clear as the strange constellation outside. "Would you like me to deliver the parcel?" she asked. Wilmot looked sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you don't have to ring the doorbell and get shouted at. I could do it for you." "But you can't," he said. "I'm only allowed to make deliveries." Your father and grandfather had people to do it for them," she said. "And you said you'd like to have your own team." Wilmot rolled his cap around his head. He seemed caught somewhere between confusion and excitement. "But that was different," he said. "They were all professional postal trolls. They'd had years of training." "What if I just ring the doorbell, give her the parcel, and get her to sign for it?" Wilmot's face lit up. So you are qualified. She smiled and held out a hand for the parcel. He was about to pass it over when she pulled the hand away. There's just one condition, she said. What's that? If I help you, you won't call HQ or Stonker or anyone else. I get to ride along for a bit, see a few of these impossible places of yours, and then you take me home before my parents miss me. Plus, I get to remember it all afterward. None of Fletch's brain surgery. Do we have a deal? He licked his lips and turned the parcel over in his hands. I'm not sure. It's highly irregular. Susie said nothing, but put her hand back out, ready to accept the package. She did her best to look calm, but inside she was as nervous as he looked. She was gambling everything on his decision. Postmaster dithered, clutching the parcel tight to his chest, looking from Susie to the old-fashioned rotary phone on his desk and back again. His nostrils flared. He chewed his bottom lip. I suppose you'll need a uniform, he said at last. Susie smiled. Perfect, he said. Chapter 4. I'll see you again for Chapter 5, guys. Right after I go boop.